One of the things about Sydney bushland which really warms my heart, I mean that really genuinely, is these patches of what we call Sydney turpentine ironbark forest. Now we've got another tree in the Myrtaceae family which may as well be a eucalypt, but it isn't, which happily in some areas co-dominates with other eucalypts and angophoras and corymbias. And if you're not familiar with it, it's called Syncarpia glomulifera, which is the turpentine. They're pretty easy to recognise, and they're doing everything basically a eucalypt can do. They've got this nice stringy bark, always full barked, doesn't really vary all that much. It goes right up to the upper branches. Turpentines can get huge. They can turn into massive trees. 40, 50 metres is not a problem for them. They do grow on the Hawkesbury sandstone, but they sort of much prefer it on an enriched soil. And I'm still at this Lucas Heights conservation area, where we've gotten sort of off the Hawkesbury sandstone and onto a transitional, what we'd call a sort of Mittagong formation, heavier shale sort of soil. And this is a great patch of Sydney turpentine ironbark forest. It's an endangered ecological community in Sydney, listed under state and Commonwealth legislation, so the whole vegetation type is considered endangered. You can easily find a lot of suckering trees. So you normally have no problem in a turpentine forest just finding a lot of smaller ones. They can, comprise the regenerating mid-story as well as the canopy. Here's some here. You can see they look, just want to snap a bit off so we can have a bit of an analysis. Oh, they got very, very flexible foliage. It doesn't really want to come off. So the main thing about turpentines is basically the leaves are opposite or arranged in whorls of four. So they've got that sort of more lily-pilly or even angophora characteristic where the leaves are opposite or in whorls of four, and I'll try and show you that in a second. Very sort of eucalyptus looking. They've got a eucalyptus feel. They're very leathery, a very leathery feel. And if you look at the undersides, they're strongly discolorous. Strongly discolorous. Check that out. They can even be pale, sort of almost white on the underside, a really pale grey. And that's due to a layer of hairs on the underside. I don't know if I'll be able to zoom in on that. I can try. But there's a layer of hairs there that are giving this a really pale underside. Probably can't do that justice, but have a look with a hand lens and you'll see it. So it's a really distinctive leaf, a really distinctive tree. They're easy to identify. That's an example of the leaves in whorls of four. Can you see that there? The leaves are in what we'd call two opposite pairs or a whorl of four. And that's typical in Syncarpia glomulifera. There's only one species in New South Wales, but Syncarpia glomulifera is divided into two subspecies. I think it's divided into two subspecies, yeah. One of them is sort of hairier than the other, or it's got more hairy parts. There it is doing it again, sort of the leaves in whorls of four. So that's pretty cool. And when you come into these turpentine ironbark forests, they're just beautiful. They're just beautiful to walk through. I don't know a lot about Northern Hemisphere forests, and I've never even walked through one, but you just get a feeling that it's a bit more sort of European in nature, or maybe English in nature. It's a nice grassy mid-story. You know, sometimes they've been modified in the urban environment, but they're just glorious to walk through. You just got to look out for things like bulldog ants. They love it in these in this sort of enriched vegetation. Probably the only thing you got to watch for, but just glorious to walk through. A lot of the time a shady canopy. And I always say this, if you get a nice sort of winter's afternoon with some golden sunlight in the late afternoon, they're just beautiful. They're really nice to be in. The next thing I've got to show you is the fruit, which are really, really distinctive for Syncarpia. I'll just find some of those. Okay. What's been absolutely hilarious is I'm wandering through this extensive patch of turpentine ironbark, just everywhere, and I've hardly been able to find a fruit. That's funny, but finally I've got some. And people really like these. They think they're really funky, and they are. Just going to pull one off here, maybe get a second one. They're just in very short supply here. I'm not really sure what's going on. So what Syncarpia glomulifera will do is it'll put on a bunch of 7 flowers. Now, that's not very different to eucalyptus. It'll put on what they call a sort of dicasial cyme, or we might just call it a cluster of 7 flowers. And I would assume it's sort of the similar thing that's happened with eucalyptus, where you get in one flower produces 2 more flowers, and then those 2 more flowers produce 2 more flowers again, and you go from 1 to 3 to 7. I'd say that's what's happening, because we got that number 7 again. And those 7 flowers, they'll look like very similar to, something like even Angophora hispida or Corymbia gymifera or something like that. They're nice and cream, they're staminate, they will have small petals and sepals at the bottom, and they don't have a bud cap. They're not a eucalyptus, so they don't have a bud cap, or they're not a Corymbia either. There's no bud cap there, so they're genuine flowers. And then the 7 flowers join together and create this aggregate fruit. And that's what Syncarpia means. It means fused fruits. So you get this beautiful 7-chambered fruit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's a 7th bit on the top. And that's what people really like about it. And it's always a funny thing for us, but people say they resemble alien spacecraft. Well, they resemble a flying saucer. Our idea of a flying saucer, I guess. And that would be a funky alien spacecraft. But I like that description. But they're a really cool fruit. 7-chambered, that's what it means, like that word synchronous or synonymous, or Syncarpia, fused fruits. So that's really cool. 7-chambered. I don't have any in flower here at the moment. You'd have to probably come in spring. That would be the best time. Probably spring to see them in flower. But you can see the fruits being produced just there. And they were hard to find. They were really hard to find. I looked around for a long time to find some fruits. But normally in some areas you'll find trees just completely covered with these. They're not normally hard to find. You'll find the ground covered in them. Sometimes on a walking track, sometimes on a street tree, they'll be laden, absolutely laden. They're not normally hard to find. They're another, eucalyptus type tree, eucalypt-like, I'd say, that produces plenty of fruit. Hard and woody. The seeds will come out of those 7 chambers. Just remember the leaves again, very pale on the underside. They're always a nice, beautiful mid-green. On the top side, there's no sign of blue in these guys. They're pretty green. There's another one in whorls of 4. And that's a beautiful turpentine. The timber is very durable. It's a very nice timber. Apparently it's one of those timbers that can be used to make wharves and put in salt water, and they'll last a long time. So again, if you ever find yourself in some Sydney turpentine ironbark forest in Sutherland Shire, we just get it here around Menai. You might get a bit in the Royal National Park as well, but generally it's here around Menai. It's just a glorious vegetation, just beautiful to walk through. Normally nice and level. You don't have any steep sandstone gullies to go down. Quite beautiful.